Frank Fairbanks, and I'm calling to order this meeting of the Phoenix AMA Groundwater Users Advisory Council. Today is Friday, January 26th, and the time is 10:05. As I said, I'm Frank Fairbanks, the chair. I'd like the other members to introduce themselves, and we'll start with Stephen, who's here.
Yeah, I'm Stephen Bales from Buckeye.
And then we have one or two on the line.
Yes,
Could you
Rory Van Pocky.
Okay.
And Leslie is online, if you can give her permission.
So we believe we have Leslie Myers on the phone, and we're trying to connect, and we'll. Is she in? Leslie, are you in?
You should be able to unmute yourself now, Leslie, if you can hear us okay.
Okay, we have quite an agenda today. I'm sure Leslie will be joining us in a minute. So I think we'll go ahead and start so that we don't run over. We do have a quorum, and with the ADWR staff members, please introduce themselves. Nicholas?
Yes, great. How are you?
I'm Nicholas Mason. I'm the GUAC coordinator.
We just go this.
I'm Melissa Sykes. I'm the Water Management Assistance Program Coordinator.
My name is Natalie Mast. I'm the Active Management Areas Director.
My name is Kevin Lane. I'm the Stakeholder Engagement Coordinator in the Statewide Planning section of ADWR.
Good morning. I'm Lainey Meeker. I'm the Statewide Program Supervisor.
Hi, I'm Colin Wildenstall. I'm the Statewide Planning Manager.
And in the back row, if your staff, please introduce yourself. If you're a citizen or a spectator, it's up to you whether you want to introduce yourself or not. If you'd like to, you can, but you don't have to. We'll start together.
I'm Joy Rivera. I'm the AMA Program Supervisor. I'm Michaela Reed. I'm the AMA Conservation Program Lead.
I'm Jerry Woodard with Water Resources Consulting.
Thank you very much. Why don't we start with right away with agenda item number 2, meeting logistics, and Nick Mason will take us through that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. Before we get started, I'd like to go over some logistics. Members of the public, that we ask that you please keep your phone muted during this meeting. If during the meeting you have questions, please feel free to type your question in the chat box, and they will be read and addressed at the end of each agenda item. If you would like to speak to the council, the call to the public will be the time to do so. Please indicate in the chat that you would like to speak, and we will unmute your phone. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted to ADWR's website and YouTube page once recording is generated. Presenters, in the interest of allowing for time for questions and ensuring that all presentations are heard, we ask presenters to keep their lectures to 10 minutes. I will be giving a 1-minute warning before time concludes. Please ask for the next slide when presenting your agenda item. Finally, if you are having any technical difficulties, please contact our help desk. Their contact information can be found on the screen. Thank you. That is all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Nick. Is there any questions on logistics? Hearing none, let's move to agenda item 3. The annual drought status report. Lainey Meeker will be doing the report. Hi, Lainey.
Okay. All right. So good morning again. My name is Lainey Meeker, the Statewide Program Supervisor with the Department of Water Resources. And today I will be presenting on behalf of our Drought Coordinator, Maggie Martin, about ADWR's drought program and a drought status update. Next slide, please. So to provide some background, ADWR's drought program was shaped by the recommendations set forth by the 2003 Arizona Governor's Drought Task Force. The task force developed the 2004 Drought Preparedness Operational Plan, which emphasizes a drought monitoring system to provide early warning of future drought conditions and proactive mitigation strategies to help reduce the impacts of drought. A key to the implementation of the Arizona Drought Preparedness Plan was the creation of 3 structural committees. The first is the Drought Interagency Coordinating Group, which serves as an advisory group for the state governor on the drought emergency declaration of the state, and the group meets biannually. The local drought impact groups are typically county-level drought impact groups. And lastly is the Drought Monitoring Technical Committee, which is responsible for gathering data about Arizona drought, climate, and weather. As a group, they do produce drought status reports and communicate that information to land managers, policymakers, and the public. ADWR offers coordination and facilitation between each committee and stakeholders. I'll now provide a bit more information on the committees that I just described, as well as summaries of their most recent meetings. Next slide, please. So in 1999, a drought emergency was declared by then Governor Jane D. Hall, activating the state of Arizona's Emergency Response and Recovery Plan and promoting aid in drought-stricken areas of the state. In 2009, that declaration was reaffirmed through an executive order, further prompting water conservation in all sectors of the state, requesting assistance for those impacted, and ordering state agencies to implement their water use reduction plans. As I mentioned in the last slide, the ICG is an advisory body to the governor on Arizona drought issues. This group meets twice a year to evaluate drought conditions and consider recommendations to the governor. The ICG last met on November 7th, 2023, and unanimously recommended that both drought declarations remain in place. The meeting agenda, summary, and presentations from this meeting are posted on ADWR's drought webpage. The next meeting date has yet to be determined, but will be taking place in May of this year, 2024. Next slide. The Drought Monitoring Technical Committees, or MTCs, are co-chaired by the state climatologist, Erin Ann Saffel, and the lead forecaster for the National Weather Service of Phoenix, Mark O'Malley. The last drought MTC meeting took place on January 10th, and both short-term and long-term drought conditions were discussed, as well as agency updates from SRP and ADWR. We've just announced the next upcoming MTC meeting, which will be on April 10th from 12 p.m. to 2 p.m. Next slide. So the LDIGs, or Local Drought Impact Groups, are groups that coordinate drought public awareness, provide impact assessment information to local and state leaders, and implement local mitigation and response options. These groups, again, are coordinated locally, and there currently is only one, which is the Pima LDIG. Next slide. So I'll now be moving on to our statewide drought status updates. On the screen are the U.S. Drought Monitor maps for the last 5 months. So starting with August, I can't talk about August and September without mentioning July, which was the exceptionally hot summer that we've had. July ended as the hottest July on record at most locations in the state, and the second driest July on record. Precipitation from tropical system Hillary started in August. However, severe short-term drought had already advanced in many areas due to the previous 6 to 7 extremely hot weeks. After a full year of no extreme drought, short-term drought started advancing through Arizona in September, which you can see on the red areas on the map. Statewide temperatures were much above average in October and November, and at the end of November, moderate or severe short-term drought had expanded into 50% of the state. I will get into December here on the next slide, please. So when we look at October, November, and December, those months ended up as the 26th driest October, November, and December on record. December was the 9th warmest December statewide since 1895. Abnormally dry conditions started replacing the areas in the state with no drought. A year ago, the state had 39% moderate or severe drought. We didn't have any extreme drought, and now we're looking at 54% of the state in a moderate, severe, or extreme drought. A strong El Nino is currently reaching its peak, with better than a 70% chance of neutral conditions developing by the middle of spring. As a result, there is only a slight chance precipitation will be above average through the next couple months. The January short-term drought status update will be released during the second week of February. Next slide. I'll now just quickly cover the quarterly long-term drought status maps. So a very wet monsoon season in 2022, followed by a very wet winter in March of 2023, brought improvement to Arizona's long-term drought. However, extreme drought advanced throughout July through December as a result of that record-breaking July and late starting monsoon season. Exceptional long drought, which is that very dark maroon color on the screen, and extreme long-term drought, which again is that bright red, has expanded throughout the state. Next slide. So before I end, I just want to quickly highlight the 2023 Arizona Drought Preparedness Annual Report that we published in December. In partnership with different drought groups, ADWR produces an annual drought preparedness report for Arizona residents and for the governor's office, covering the previous water year. The report includes a summary of Arizona's drought status for the past water year and an outlook for the next water year. It includes drought and emergency designation information and highlights drought conditions and preparedness activities, including water supply drought planning for community water systems and precipitation in regional and national efforts. You can find this report by visiting the ADWR Drought Program website. Next slide. So lastly, just to share some different collaborative opportunities that are available to the public and any interested parties. Some would be to join the drought observation and reporting discussions that take place during that MCC meeting. You can form a local drought impact group to stay informed by joining the ADWR Drought Program email list, where we share meeting information as well as drought status report updates. And just to note on the local ALDIGs, these are usually coordinated with the U of A Cooperative Extension Program or local county emergency management. ADWR does offer support and statewide coordination for ALDIGs, and we would be happy to provide any additional information for those interested. So that concludes, next slide. That concludes my presentation today. On the screen is a link to the ADWR's drought webpage, as well as my contact information if you have any additional questions. Also happy to answer any questions right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Questions. First, we'll start with any questions from the committee. Any questions here, Dave?
Briefly, Lainey, how long is that report? Like, is it so many, you say pages?
It is pretty thorough, so we're looking over 30 pages or so, but it's comprehensive for the water year, so that I think is really key. I'd also just note again, those ICG meeting summary reports that happen twice a year are a bit shorter and can give you kind of a snapshot of half of the water year at a time.
Very good, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Rory or Leslie, do you have any questions?
No, I don't have any. Thank you.
I don't either, and I apologize for being late.
No problem. In fact, you might have just made it. We just didn't have the connection finalized. We started at 5 after, and I think you were on the line, but we just didn't connect with you, so everything's fine. I do have 2 questions. One, and I hate to ask you to go back, there was a slide that had a little 14 at the bottom that showed the drought and over time.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. And the one before it, and there was another one. Why are the red and yellow spots so different between this one and the one before it also had, or similar to this? So that's a pattern, makes sense, not disagreeing with it. But that pattern is very different than the pattern on number 14.
So this slide here, we're looking at each month individually, and we're looking at short-term drought. So then, Nick, if you can go forward to the slide that had the 14 on it. Thank you. So this is going to be the quarterly long-term. So looking at short-term drought versus long-term, and then looking at the time frame. So you're kind of seeing more of that gradual pattern as we moved out of that very wet winter, had that very extremely hot summer.
Oh, yeah.
And then that pushed us into that October-December map that you see in the upper right, where we're now in that more extreme long-term drought.
So the reason I asked the question is these maps show the worst hit areas in western Arizona and central Arizona, whereas the other map showed it in southeast Arizona. Short term, what is that? Is that precipitation map as opposed to general conditions?
I don't remember the exact timelines. There's different methodologies that they use to create those 2 analyses. The short term might be month to month. So do you remember those numbers?
The drought term is essentially So long-term drought maps use standard precipitation and ET index data. That's those methodologies too that you're talking about. And that's looking at, when we say long-term, it's looking at 24, 36, 48, and 60-month period. Versus short-term, we do that month to month, and then the quarterly would be 3 months is kind of the longest.
That explains it, makes a lot of sense, right? Thank you very much. Second question is, to your knowledge, has there been any beginnings or interest in forming a local drought impact group in Maricopa County, which is of course the area that we work with? Have you heard of beginnings or discussions to form a group in that area?
Not to my knowledge in any recent time period, covering at least the last few years. It's something that I know our drought coordinator, Maggie Martin, is very interested in looking at more closely. At one point in time, we did have quite a few local drought impact groups throughout the state. In fact, almost every county and almost every tribal, federally recognized tribe was participating in those groups. And so it's something that we are very interested in seeing how we can better support if there was that interest. I think the key is really noting that in the past, those groups have been best facilitated in partnership with the county emergency management or the U of A cooperative extensions, just to give it more structure and to have kind of more of an overseeing entity for those groups. So that would be something that we could definitely talk through more if there were folks that were interested in starting one here in this area in the Phoenix AMA.
It would seem to me that there'd be benefit to such a group. Is that also your perception here in the department?
Yeah, I think historically those groups played a really key role in providing local information and even local data on what they were seeing the impact of drought having in their areas. And that can be really important when the governor is looking at, how are we best addressing drought throughout the state? How are areas, different regions and counties being individually impacted? And then there's, of course, the educational piece of it, right? Folks, I trust my local information the most. And so I think being able to educate your own community members on what's going on with drought and how to help mitigate it is really crucial. So yeah, I would see lots of value in these groups.
And presumably such a group would have representatives from different sectors. It wouldn't just be government. It might be people from ag or industries or.
I think ideally, yeah, you would have a lot of different participating members within the community that have different perspectives on how the drought's impacting them.
Thank you. That's it for questions from the committee. Any questions from the public?
We do have a question that came in on the chat from the public from Matt Anthony. Are there clear guidelines for implementation of LDIGS, or is it fairly freelance?
I would ask if he would like to reach out to me. My email is on the screen. I'd be really happy to dive into that more with him and see kind of what his interest level is and what other questions I can answer.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Any further questions? Let's move on to item 4, which is the supply and demand assessment results, which will be provided by Colin Wogenstall. Did I get that right, Colin?
You got that right, Mr. Chairman. Today, my esteemed colleague, Mr. Kevin Lane, will actually be doing the presentation.
Great.
Yep, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, today I'm going to be providing you with the results of the 2023 supply and demand assessment. If you can move forward. So just to get a very quick background, ARS 45-105B14 is what gives the department the requirement to follow up and see what the conditions on the ground in all 51 groundwater basins in the state of Arizona are. Now, this was put into law in June or July of 2022. And the point is to find every single year and do at least 6 basins and understand what is going on in the groundwater situation in each. With the idea that every 5 years we will have a complete understanding of that 5-year period, going back historically and looking forward into the future. Next slide. So to kind of manage expectations and understand what is going on, the methods we're creating new structures using older sciences that we found, methods, including bringing in data from voluntary sources, from cities, from community water systems, from public water users, just to understand what they are going through, what their water they are using, as well as scientific estimates from other state agencies as well as academic institutions. It is not a flow model. We are not looking at where the water is exactly within the basin. It is trying to understand basin scale totals that are occurring and to better understand what the total amount of water, the ins and outs of the entire systems. This is not going to be used as, or is not intended to be used for actual regulatory purposes. It is simply meant for planning and information for the public and local communities so that they can plan and understand. So with that, the methods will add complexity over time. We will go through and improve them. And as we build a better understanding each and every year, this is a very large project that hasn't been done on a statewide scale since, I believe, 1980s. So very big undertaking that the department was able to produce. Next slide. So we broke it down into the two sides of what is currently in the system in the groundwater, surface water, effluent, and the recharge that is happening, as well as the demands from our human demands and environmental need. And we've broken that down through agriculture, municipal, and industrial users. And we combine those two to understand either the overall recharge to the aquifer or the overall overdraft of the aquifer over time. And as you can see on the screen, we kind of detail how agriculture versus industrial versus municipal systems are spread out. Next slide. So one of the big things that was decided on early in the process was to use the average well depth of each groundwater basin to understand what is the water currently easily available. Previous studies have focused on the 1,200-foot level of where the water is, but that doesn't work for every basin. Some basins, the water's already way lower just because of the nature of the basin. So we went with, what is the average well depth? Now that is just to understand, like, without adding a ton of new costs of drilling new wells, because that's an extremely expensive process, especially for just rural landowners or small businesses who really rely on their own private wells, what is currently easily available in the system. And so the aquifer can go much deeper, but if it's not easily extractable, then it might as well be 10 million miles away. So we're trying to understand what the aquifer is within that artificial confinement at the bottom and then to the top of the water table. Next slide. Now, this is actually my portion of the project that I put into the most, was the initial outreach and subsequent outreach with stakeholders within each basin we studied. We sent out mail to a wide variety of stakeholders through the private sector, public sector. We met with local groups just to understand what the struggles or what the challenges each basin had on the ground. We were trying to figure out, not just from the office here in Phoenix, but from them living in each basin, what they were dealing with to get a better understanding to perhaps fill holes that we may not know of. And so those stakeholder meetings were used to really get a much deeper understanding. And we also had boots on the ground field trips where if we studied the basin, we were stepping foot in that basin. And that was decided early on to make sure that we visited people in the basins to actually meet them and understand what they were doing and what was going on in each location. Next slide. Now we will go into the actual basins and the results of the basins now that we've moved past the method. So in 2023, we kind of focused on two sections of the state, Southeast Arizona, which was the Douglas AMA Wilcox Basin and the San Bernardino Valley Basin. And we went to each of those basins, looked at every single, major road. We looked at the bird's eye view and on the ground, met and talked with many private and public services to figure out what they were struggling with. And we also went to the West Basins, including Harquahala INA, McMullen Valley, Butler Valley, and Tiger Wash Basin. And we did those field trips very early on as well in the process. Next slide.
I'm sorry, Kevin. Looks like we lost the presentation from the meeting, so I'm going to try to quickly share that again.
Okay.
I apologize, everyone.
Yeah, no worries.
And I apologize for my quick clicking. I'll try to catch up to where you were, Kevin.
Yeah, no worries. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so 7 basins this year. We are statutorily required to do 6 basins per year. This being the first year we were building out the processes and building out the methods. And we have a whole comprehensive list that's publicly available of all of our methods and all of the math and science that we used and all of the research papers that we leaned upon, as well as past reports. So that is all publicly available. The basins, we focused on these ones particularly to really dial in the methods and ideas that we had going into this, and we expanded from there for this year. Next slide now. So going into, I'm just going to show one of the basins as an example of some of the data that we collected and we've now projected forward. So it's not just a current state, but it is a past state going back to 1990, because that was the date where we had universally the best data. Behind that, it was the data was getting a little less consistent for each basin. So we wanted to keep a nice start point, and then we also project out to 2075 just to get a projection going forward to understand what the likely scenarios may be for each basin. So in the case of Harquahala INA, between 1990 and 2022, for every 1 acre foot of supply going into the basin, 1.4 acre feet were used. And you can see on the slide right below that, on the graph right below that, a large amount of the water use was groundwater, but there was some Colorado River water used as well in Harquahala INA. And as you can also see below that in the yellow is the demand. So below that line is the demand, above is the supply. Below it is all mostly agriculture, and that is the major water use in the basins, and that's major water use in many of the basins that we studied for 2023. So that was that means in 33 years there was a deficit of 803,000 acre feet during that time period, and we're expecting through our projections, which take into account different scenarios, including a status quo of staying the same of where we're at, the climate, water conservation, reducing water use, a growth of population and use, and as well as technology efficiencies, show a pretty slim spread that we're projecting between 4.8 and 5.1 million acre feet over the next 53 years to 2075. And that red line in the bottom graph shows the median, or the average well depth rather, So by around 2075, we will reach the average well depth, which means some of the wells will start going dry. Or average was half of the wells, the average wells going dry. Yeah. So that's the projection of water usage in Harquahala INA. There's the 6 other basins as well, but I just wanted to include this one for your group to see today. Next slide. So the deliverables of what did we produce going through all of this data? We made a methods appendix going through all of our data, all of our math, any assumption and estimate that we made, we laid out. Additionally, we also produced reports that are available on our website. What did they get down to 30 or 40 pages? It depends on the basin. And it's a basin scale budget and projections, as well as the history going backwards to 1990. Combination of the data, as I said before, was reported, existing estimates, newly developed estimates that we produced within our department on using the advice and suggestions of stakeholders, as well as other water professionals through the state, as well as produced newly developed projection scenarios going forward for each groundwater basin we studied. Now, one of the main issues we came up against was limited reported data. Heavy reliance on estimates was necessary in some of the basins, not in Harquahala INA because it is an irrigation non-expansion area, and the AMAs and INAs are where we have the best data. Outside of those, our main sources is community water systems, where towns and water providers do provide the department with water use numbers. But outside of those and outside of those basins, we have to go with the best science available to us, as well as suggestions and understanding from industry as well. And that was why it was really important to reach out to private groups to get an understanding of what they feel their water they were using. So we produced our final assessment reports, the methods appendix, as well as a comprehensive and really easy to use and understand online dashboard to manipulate the data and kind of understand it better. And we're very proud of our team for being able to produce that as well. Next slide, please. So now going forward into 2024, here are the basins we are going to be studying. The Phoenix AMA will not be one of them. However, a lot of the surrounding basins will be. So starting up in the north part of the state is the big northwest is Big Sandy, followed by the Verde River Basin right there, Prescott AMA, Agua Fria Basin just north in Black Canyon City and up towards Mayor, the Upper Hassayampa Basin, the Tonto Creek Basin, the Renegris Plain to the west of Harquahala, and then southwest of the Phoenix AMA is the Gila River, or the Gila Bend Basin, Donnelly Creek, Donnelly Wash Basin, the Lower San Pedro, the Upper San Pedro, Cienega Creek, San Rafael, and the Santa Cruz AMA. And those are our 2024 basins. As you can see, we are ramping up. We have the methods nailed down, and we are going to be increasing the scope of the amount of basins per year. Next slide, please. So that takes us to our website. So ADWR, we have a web page now for supply and demand, for the estimates, for our reports. All you have to do is when you go to azwater.gov, there's a programs drop down right to the right of our logo. And in that drop down will show on the right hand side supply and demand. You click that and it'll go to our web page for our reports that go into the science that gives a brief overview. And then in the drop downs, you have each of the reports for the individual basins, as well as our methods and appendix of all of the math and all of the estimates that we used. And also on the page is our dashboard, as I previously mentioned, where you can go look through, change the time period and everything. It's incredibly in depth, and it's a great way to understand the data as well. Next slide. And with that, that is the end of my presentation. My contact information is not up there, but if anyone would like to reach out to me, my email is klane@azwater.gov, and I'm happy to answer questions where I can, and if I cannot, I will pass it along to Colin. So thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you. Very thorough report, very interesting. Let's start with any questions by the GUAC. Leslie or Rory, do you have any questions on the report?
Thanks, Frank. I don't have a question, but and I don't know if this is happening for everyone online, but the slides weren't advancing. I was just seeing the 2023 map of the basins that were studied. So could we maybe get a copy of the presentation?
Yes, we're having some technical issues. The slides will be posted to the website shortly after the meeting. We're working to address it now. We're hoping to see that this will help. Are you seeing the slides advancing now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. We apologize for that.
So hopefully we'll get the rest of the report. And let me piggyback on what you said. You asked, Leslie, because I think it's a good point. Right now we have a wonderful screen that gives the names and the phone numbers and the websites of the presenters. I wonder if it'd be possible for the committee to receive all of these slots so that if we had a later question, we would have the name, phone number, and website of the person that presented. And I could probably take down the websites and hope I didn't miss a dot or a slant. But if you all could just, on a single page, put the website location of the reports, if we wanted to go back in depth, then we wouldn't have to go through the whole department website. That'd be a big help.
I think that's a great idea, sir. And what you can do is you can reach out to me, and I can get in contact with all the presenters and everything like that, and get you back everything you're looking for. I can be that middleman between those two processes.
Okay, thank you. Leslie, Rory, anything else?
Yeah, great job. I was just wondering, is there anything concerning you see that surprised you, or when you were analyzing these basins and stuff, anything you guys saw by chance?
Colin, would you, or Natalie?
I think in some of the basins we saw declines that surprised us. It was a little more rapid than we thought.
Okay.
But I'd like to add that this is an estimate, and we've taken a new kind of track here with the average well depth instead of the depth to bedrock. So, as Kevin mentioned, as the process goes on, we'll refine our methods and improve the process.
Thank you.
I had a couple questions. I guess the Harquahala has an INA, and you mentioned that you do get some data. How extensive is your data in the department for INAs? Is there a little bit, a lot? I know you have quite a bit of data from AMAs, but do the INAs have extensive data? Does everybody file a report, for example?
Yeah, so within INAs, anyone who's withdrawing water from a non-exempt well is required to submit an annual report. INA data tends to be a little bit less reliable than AMA data, for example.
That would be understandable.
Part of the reason for that is that folks in INAs are only required to report if they use water. And so if we don't get a report from someone, we don't necessarily know if that's because they didn't file their report or if they actually didn't use water. So our reported data in those areas does tend to be a little bit less reliable. We did use that data as a part of the supply and demand reports as kind of a checkpoint on our estimates to make sure that we weren't like totally out in left field. But we did definitely create other estimates in addition to that reported data to kind of have points of comparison.
From my perspective, this is just an outstanding study and something we really needed to do. And that the state is so diverse in terms of water use and water availability, and just to get a baseline is great. I think for actual users, ultimately, there's huge variations within areas. Areas might perceive themselves as being almost dry. In other areas, they may have almost a surplus of water. Is that a step that would occur later on once the whole step, or is that undecided as yet?
At this point, we're not able to make those types of fine geographic distinctions. With a full groundwater flow model, you might be able to make those kinds of distinctions, but a flow model for an individual basin takes 3-4 years to develop. And we're talking about doing an average of 10 or 11 basins per year. So it's just not feasible on these timescales at the time.
Well, this is just a huge step forward, and this creates a baseline that maybe someday somebody could go further,
Yeah.
whatever the further is.
Frank?
Yes,
I had
I'm
one
sorry,
question.
yeah, I forgot you.
Well, I know, I read it.
Go ahead.
On the Harquahala, in particular, and it showed that going forward 50 years, I forgot what it said, and it that certain huge storage there. Does that take into account, how do you determine what the use is going to be? Since agriculture is going away there, what did you use to project for usage?
We have 5 different projection scenarios that we tack onto the end of the baseline analysis, and they look at different things. So one is just the status quo. If everything stayed exactly the same, what would that look like? And then we have a growth scenario, a technology scenario, conservation scenario, and we kind of factor in, what if there's an increase in irrigation efficiency or an increase in efficiency in household use, things like that. So each little projection scenario will look at those different things and take that into account for that projection.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Are there any CAP recharge sites in I'm trying to remember. Is there 1 or 2 CAP recharge sites in Harquahala?
There are some stored credits there. There's not active recharge occurring at this time. But there are, I don't remember the volume of stored credits there, but it was not insubstantial.
Yeah, there was a fair amount of water.
I think, I know there's some credit.
Yeah.
But there are no recharge facilities that are operating.
There are not any recharge facilities that are currently storing water.
Great. Now, you're going to go throughout the state. Will you at and there's already tremendous data about the AMAs. Are you going to do this same thing for the AMAs? It makes sense to wait since we have so much data, but I understand why you're starting where you're starting. But will you do the same process for the AMAs?
Yeah, because they're groundwater basins, and so they're covered by that statute. We have to complete an analysis. They will be included.
Additionally, for the 2024 basins, we are actually including 2 AMAs, and that would be the Santa Cruz and the Prescott AMA.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions or comments from the public?
There are a few questions and comments from the public, but Mr. Chairman, I was going to ask you for your permission to have those people be directed to the emails on the screen in order so we could advance and get to all the presentations today.
So what are you saying, Nick?
I'm asking your permission to direct the public's questions to the emails on the screen so that we can move forward with our
So
presentation.
you're concerned about completing?
Yes.
Okay. Let's ask the committee. That makes sense to me, and I'm willing to do that. Does anybody on the committee object to that? Well, thank you, Nick. Well, I'm sorry, Rory?
No,
Okay.
I'm all good with that.
Okay,
Me too.
then let's go ahead and do that in the interest of completing. And if we end up with a huge amount of time in the end, I guess we could go back even then if we have time coming out arrears. Okay.
Sounds good.
Then let's go to the next item. Item 5, groundwater withdrawal fee recommendation and WMAP update. And it doesn't say, it's Melissa that's going to do it?
Yes.
Melissa, right.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, council members and members of the public. I'll be going over the Water Management Assistance Program fund balance and the status of the BCP groundwater conservation grant, but first I'll cover the withdrawal fee rate for 2024. Following our last discussion regarding withdrawal fee rates for 2024, the director approved the council's recommendation to increase the WMAP fund by 5 cents, making a withdrawal fee of $3.30. The current balance is $650,452. Of that, $572,896 is committed, leaving a balance of $77,556. We expect to collect about $247,000 next year at the new rate. Projects that are currently funded with the WMAP funds are the Smartscape Professional Landscape Training Program, the Water Conservation Management Project, the Residential Water Use Phase 2 Project, Arizona Project WED, and the newly executed Town of Gilbert's rebate program. The DCP Lake Detection Project also receives $32,355 in WMAP funding. Next, I'll give an update on the groundwater conservation grant. The ESSER Design Arizona Project WED Collaborative Video Series project was completed, as well as Gary Woodard's water efficiency audit for HOA common areas and other irrigation customers. They will be presenting today to present on their accomplishments. All other projects are ongoing. So before we move on to the presentations, are there any questions regarding the WMAP funds or the groundwater conservation project?
Are there any questions from the committee? Or comments? Hearing
No.
none, hearing none, if there are any questions or comments from the community, they can ask them and we'll get to them later. Go ahead, proceed.
Yeah.
You're done?
Yeah, I'm done, sorry.
Boy, that was fast.
Yes. That's short and sweet.
Good work. Okay. Let's go to item 6. Agenda item 6. WMAP DCP completed project presentations. We have to have all these letters so we know we're working with the government.
Everybody, Colin is right there.
This is going to be presented by Gary Woodard and Pam Esser.
Yes.
Gary?
Pam will have a presentation after.
Yeah, Gary
Mr.
Woodard will
Woodard's.
be presenting.
10 minutes or 15? 10 and then 5 additional for questions.
Okay. I'll have to talk fast. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this is, next slide. This is a project that began around the start of COVID. My partner in the study, Roger Van Gelder, has been doing these water efficiency audits for longer than anybody west of the Mississippi. I've been involved in them for the last 8 or 9 years. Previous ones focused on commercial customers, principally for Stockdale and Tucson. The proposal that was put to you was to focus on irrigation customers with an emphasis on homeowner HOA common areas. Next slide. So our goals were primarily, help the customers save water and money, but make them look good and feel good about it in the process. Even when we found egregious, obvious water waste, we just presented that as this is a great opportunity. Everybody wins by fixing that. Next slide. Next slide. So the previous studies had shown that there were more likely to be problems found in irrigation systems than in other types of systems. We had found 1 in 4 of those commercial audits that had irrigation lines had undiscovered leaks, and on average they were very large, over 5 acre-feet per year average, costing the customer about $10,000 a year. These were the sort of findings that we immediately jumped on when they were brought to the attention of the customers. Other recommendations that might require an investment in new equipment, sometimes it can be a year or two before they're acted upon, sometimes they're never acted upon. But these previous studies, we found potential for 12% water savings on average. Next slide. So we also found, in addition to a lot of leaks in irrigation systems in the previous studies, a lot of problems with other components of the system, including emitters, including smart irrigation controllers that have been set up to be dumb, not programmed correctly, not taking advantage of weather data. Next. And we found often, you know, as a result of that, the irrigation systems would be running in January the same way they were in February. Next. So yeah, over irrigation, lack of seasonality, not taking advantage of local weather data were some of the major problems. Go ahead. Next. So the study was delayed because of COVID. It was extended multiple times because the participating municipal water providers, once they saw what was happening, they liked it and they asked it to be extended. Initially, DWR covered all the costs of the audit. When we realized that there was a lot of popularity in this, we did a cost-sharing system to get more audits done. And eventually, we're still doing audits. We were doing audits this last fall. We're doing more audits this spring where, you know, they're paying for 100% of it. So it's this grant proves the concept. Next. So we asked for just under 163,000, and we said we'd do at least 60 audits next. We were given 120 with the suggestion that maybe the GRD would make up the balance. I knew that wasn't going to happen, but next, they did give us $10,000 next. And then when we started cost sharing with these providers, we ended up netting almost 43,000 in additional funds. Also, some of them started having us do audits outside the AMA for which they paid full freight. Next. So these differed from the previous commercial audits in that we did a lot more pre-analysis to find the real low-hanging fruit, look for red flags. Next. Okay. So the key was to get data before we did the site visits. A lot of water meters now record up to 100 days of hourly readings. It's called the ERT data. We also developed our own water meter loggers that can be strapped onto the water meter, and they get us readings at the 5-second increment, or a year if you want to, but you know, typically 2 weeks. Next. We also decided to make the reports a lot shorter, heavily illustrated, so that people would pay attention to them. Next. So we did the preliminary analysis. We got 5 years of monthly billing where that was available. We got the ERT data, or we deployed the loggers. We also looked at Google Maps or Google Earth to try to match up the water use with the obvious landscape and water features. Next. So we looked for red flags, steady increases over time, spikes in usage. The flow never stops. You know, if you've got flow every day between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m., something's wrong. And a number of other factors. Next. So this is some examples of those billing records. Next. So this one shows, you know, an unexplained ramp up. What's going on? Why has water usage exceeded historic levels? Next. This is an example of a big spike, probably a major leak that was discovered and fixed. Next. This is what looks like a similar spike, but following it, there was no winter minimum. There'd always been a reduction in the winter, and that didn't happen the following winter. Next. So that's just some examples. So this is just an example of one HOA where, you know, we look at the whole site, we zoom in on the water intensive landscape, we look at the historical data, we do our point system based on how many red flags do we find, and we come up with a conclusion. put it in one of three categories. Yes, we should try to do this. Maybe we should try to do this, or no, it doesn't warrant further investigation. Next. So there's some of the factors that we use. Older systems, once they get to be 12 years or older, almost always have leaks. We also look, how did the last 12 months we used it compared to the previous month? All these factors weigh in. Next. So then we do the site visit. First, we have to recruit them, convince them that they want to do this. Our original plan was to work with HOA management companies. That failed utterly. Those people are just putting out fires. We ended up having to work directly with the HOA boards, but that worked. By the way, when we requested money for this, we had an identical proposal for the Tucson AMA. And their comment was, nobody's ever succeeded in working with HOA, so we're not going to fund you. And your take was, nobody's ever succeeded in working with HOAs. Good luck. And it was a challenge, but we persevered, and we were able to get them interested. Next. So this is some of the steps involved with the site visit, deploying instruments, walking around, talking to the person in charge of the landscaping and the irrigation, and then we did analysis. Next. We also, if there was a swimming pool, did a different suite of analyses to figure out if there were problems with those as well, or other water features. Next. So there's the deployment of one of these loggers that we did. Next. In cases where there is no meter, but you need to know what's going on, we deploy ultrasonic loggers for several days. Next. And where there's water features, we look at the conductivity of the water to figure out the cycles of concentration. That's often good. Or if you see a puddle on the ground, you don't know, is that rainwater? Is that, what is that? Where did? Next. So then we do the analysis, write up the report, try to keep them to not much more than 6 pages, and then we follow up afterwards to see what they've done and how it worked out for them. Next. So we evaluated our effectiveness by looking at not just water saving, but next. We found that the water providers, one of the big benefits they saw was a breakthrough in being able to work with the HOAs, which they had trouble with prior to that. Next. So this is just an example of what we would put in the reports. If we found a leak, we'd have at least one photo saying, there it is, right there in that box next to that tree. Next. So the follow-up report included, we developed best management practices for HOA irrigation, which were provided to everybody who was involved. Next. We did a post-audit survey of all of them, and then we summarized those results. Next. We prepared a buyer's guide for smart water controllers. This is a decision tree that was included in that guide. Next. And then we did a workshop next on selecting and programming, with an emphasis on programming the smart controllers. Next. So these are the participants. They kept growing over time. We got more and more on board. Next. So we did over 500 pre-analyses. Next. We found 120 sites that seemed to be good candidates. Next. 82 were visited. Next. There were about 1.5 site visits per site. We often had to go back. Next. And we wound up with 80 final reports, so we exceeded the goal of 60 by a fair amount. Next. We concentrated on HOAs. 51 of the 80 were HOAs. In some areas, there were no HOAs, like the town of Superior, just no HOAs. So we did a cemetery, a high school, the public swimming pool, Boyce Thompson Arboretum. We found other irrigation parks. Next. So we made a total of 187 next recommendations, or about 2.5 recommendations per report. Next. 67 leaks detected, almost 1 per report. Next. So yeah, 84%. Next. Those that were not HOAs were highly diverse, and there's some examples. They also varied enormously in size and complexity from 1 meter, very small fraction of an acre, to many that were over 20 meters. We did ones with 57 and 74 meters. Some of them were square miles in size. Next. So here's the summary. The total water use was just under 1,200 acre feet per year. Next. The potential savings was about 215 or 20% of the total usage. Next. And average potential savings was 17% of their bill, or about $10,000. Next. So to compare that with the previous commercial audits, the average water savings there was 12%. For these HOAs, 20%. Next. The monetary savings went up from 10% to 17%. Next. And irrigation meter leaks went up from 1 out of 4 to 1 out of 2. Next. So we were convinced we would find more problems than irrigation customers, and particularly HOAs, and we did. Next. So we think that the pre-analysis was part of that. We also believe that, in fact, HOA common areas are more prone to water waste. But because of the pre-analysis, we can say our findings are consistent with that, but they don't prove it. Next. Recommendations were dominated by, repair your leaks, and repair your valves, emitters, but there were also a number of recommendations that focused on the controllers. Next. Next. So some of the other recommendations are quit irrigating places where there's no plants. That'd be an example of a great opportunity to save, but don't make them feel bad about it. Just gently point out, like, what are you doing? Next. We had a number of sites where they were considering reducing turf, and they wanted our input as to if they remove certain patches of turf, how much water and how much money would they save? Next. Next. And one more. Yeah. And in the case of Boyce Thompson Arboretum, they were about to redo their entire irrigation system, so they had us work directly with the company that was going to put in the new system. Next. Broad observation, we saw a big step increase with COVID and HOA common area water use. There seemed to be a lot more overseeding winter rye. Don't know why, but it was real. Next. You can see it ramping up there. Next. Don't know how much of that increase that was triggered probably by COVID is permanent, how much of it has gone away, because we don't have any follow-up data. But yeah, that was one of the more interesting things. We also found that those that were overseeding were grossly over-irrigating in November. They would typically use more water in November than in the middle of the summer. So that's another opportunity that we weren't anticipating. I'll take questions now.
Thank you very much. Committee, or Steve, you want to start? Any questions?
Sir, what did you say the dollar amount is savings was? I saw that one slide.
It averaged, for these, it averaged 17% of their bill.
So in the, like, looking at a return on asset, it's a thumbs up?
Yeah, I did a calculation that, if for the non-leak repairs, which always happen, which have a ridiculously good payback. For the other recommendations, we didn't even make recommendations unless the payback period was less than a year.
Mm-hmm.
And they typically were 5 to 10 months payback period.
So positive.
Yeah.
Definitely positive.
Yeah.
I like the one where you show with their irrigating, there's no plants there. We've all seen that everywhere. Parking lots are full of those. But I do want to remind you, Maricopa County is under a death mandate to reduce dust in our county.
Oh, so those little circles are wet.
There you go. Somebody could walk across.
There's always a silver
cloud of
lining.
dust. Thank you, EPA, on that one.
Yeah.
Anything else?
That's good, thank you.
Rory or Leslie, any questions or comments?
So, Gary, you might have said this, but how many, do you still have, I would say a lot of customers in the queue of more folks that want to do audits?
Yeah, yesterday I finished, some auditing for Tucson. Monday, we start a week of audits. Monday, we start Chandler. The following Monday, we start Arizona Water, Casa Grande, and Coolidge. And the following Monday, Scottsdale. And it just keeps rolling. So yeah, you know, we had already been doing commercial audits for Scottsdale and Tucson for several years before this. But this grant allowed us to, it gave a lot of other municipal water providers a real good excuse to give it a try, because at first it was at no cost, you know, and then
Right.
cost sharing. And so that has resulted in, and yeah, it's, we anticipated there would be some follow-up work, but it has exceeded our expectations by a lot.
Yeah, I feel like with all the pretty big increases in water rates, especially in the valley, that the cities and homeowners associations and other commercial folks would be really interested in this.
Yeah, what we found was, one of the silver linings of COVID was, HOAs, because of the great economic uncertainties with the start of COVID, HOAs just did not want to raise their monthly fees at all, and yet they were being hit with increasing costs. At the same time, there was so much news coverage of what was happening with Lake Mead and the Colorado River and the mega drought. So I think it made the HOA boards far more receptive to the offer of, would you like, you know, for no cost to save money in water, you know, that got a much better reception.
Yeah, I think it's a great return on investment.
This is Rory. Yeah, I think you're spot on here. The homeowners associations have turnover rates with their employees. And I think sometimes they need to be reminded, you know, efficiency, how you're talking about, you know, watering timing a day is so critical. Are the sprinklers really catch water in the areas they're intended to? And are they walking the area? I mean, just seeing if there's leaks, because their savings of cost and water usage would be tremendous. And what are you doing like with the BMPs? Are they active in the best management practices? Do they have something there they can refer to and be educated on?
Yes, we distributed, we had a workshop, but we distributed everything, obviously turnout. It was on a Saturday, you know, most of the HOA board presidents had better things to do. But we communicated with them all by phone and by email, and we distributed everything that we produced by email. But something you touched upon, one of the reasons we were sure there were more problems with HOA common areas is that nobody's in charge. You've got the management company, you've got the board, you've got the landscape company, and so it's diffuse responsibility. And I think the philosophy of a lot of the landscapers is nobody's going to get fired for over irrigating 15%, but if we accidentally under irrigate 15%, we could get fired. So their incentive is to make sure the plants get all the water they need and more. So that's not, you know, the way the board thinks, but so we tried to schedule the audit for the day that the landscapers would be there. So ideally, we'd have both a board member and whoever's in charge of the landscape crew go along on these site visits.
Another question, is there homeowners associations, like annual meetings or anything that you guys could touch base with them to educate them more in depth?
Yeah, we thought the ticket was, there's a small number of management companies that each manage dozens of HOAs. And that's was our plan. And it just didn't work. It just didn't work. And so we kind of pivoted to working with the conservation professionals and each of the water providers to have some of them, they had contacts with some of the HOAs, but they would also point us at HOAs where they were sure there were significant problems, and then we would just, usually it was either the board president or some of the HOAs had subcommittees for landscaping or the like. So it was just a lot of one-on-one emails and phone calls.
Thank you. Great work.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Rory, I think HOAs do have to have an annual meeting where they invite members. The members don't need to show.
Right.
But getting on that agenda isn't easy because they have a whole bunch of things they want to talk about, so. It would depend on a president that really cares.
Right.
Right.
To put it on the agenda, allowed to be spoken to.
You sound like you have experience.
I've been there and done it.
But we were surprised at how many accepted the offer of the audit because they had decided they wanted to reduce their turf or otherwise modify their landscaping, and they just didn't know how to start.
I bet the financial end of things, we all care about water and want to do better. But boy, when the dollars keep going up, that gets to be a motivator not only for the HOAs but the residents. And the residents get on their HOA about why is it going up so much.
Right.
I would guess there's going to be more interest in the future because of the financial side.
I'm not sure we can handle a whole lot. We're doing them from the White Mountains and Sedona to Bisbee and everywhere in between now.
Oh, boy. Well, that's good work.
Thank you.
Thank you. And, any comments from the staff on this? I didn't want to leave you out. You must have worked with them. Any perspective you give?
I don't think I have anything.
Okay. And
I would just like to comment that the staff were very helpful in extending. That's first because of COVID-related delays, but then a couple of times there was just this growing interest by the water providers.
Thank you. Do we want to wait to the end for any questions from the public, or do you want to go ahead with?
We do have a few questions to the public. I'm going to leave that up to you, Mr. Chairman. It's currently 11:17. If you want to get into those questions now, but we do have 2 more presentations to get through.
Why don't we, since we held one group, it may make sense to hold another. Can you stay, or are you time?
I think my parking's good till noon.
Okay.
Sure.
I'll try to get back because I'm sure you'd like to hear the questions too. Okay, well then let's move on. Thank you very much. Great report. Pam Esser, I guess is going to do the other report.
Let me just get the presentation up to speed.
We'll get the information up.
Pamela, can you hear us?
I can. I'm just waiting. I see somebody else's. Oh, okay. Meeting agenda. Can you start our first slide, please? There we go. Wow. That font is really defaulting there. I'm not sure why that would be the case, but all right. Well, first of all, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm here today to both with my colleague, Kevin Surway, who's going to be presenting a portion of our presentation, as we have 8 slides to present today to walk through 2 portions of this very comprehensive project that we partnered with the Arizona Project WET team down at University of Arizona. It was a very collaborative, almost 18-month program. And why don't we go to the next slide, please? So overall scope of this grant and how we determined to utilize it for groundwater education was we broke it into 4 tasks. The first one was to update the Arizona Project website, where the videos were going to be promoted and housed. And so that was a process that we began undertaking as we began to really focus on how would we tell the groundwater story in Arizona. And as we all know, it's not a simple story to tell, and there are many misconceptions. And how do we break this down into a format that's easily understood, easily shared, and is allowed for educators to utilize in education opportunities as well as the general public. So we ended up with our partnership with Arizona Project WET to collaborate on a series of 9 educational videos. And these are all housed on the Project WET website. And at the end of our little mini presentation here, we're going to play the first video for you all so you can get a flavor for how they feel and how they flow, no pun intended. So in addition to the completion of the 9 videos, we wanted to build in a marketing and outreach plan for the video series to really get our messaging out into the marketplace. So I will be touching on the results of that marketing and outreach plan to give you an idea of the metrics and the exposure that they received. And then we'll talk just a little bit about what we'd like to see for next steps on this program. So next slide, please. And Kevin will start here.
Hi, yes, we did a series of 9 videos that range from just introducing the idea of groundwater and what groundwater is, all the way to how it's used, how we access it, and what's been done previously as far as conservation or legal policy. And we mainly focused, we wanted to focus on youth and adults. We decided on about a 5th grade education level so that they would be accessible to everyone, sophisticated enough for adults and just people that are generally interested in groundwater conservation, but then also be able to use primarily in the classroom with educators and students. And they're all 9 of them are around 3 minutes long. We wanted to keep them fairly short so we could focus on the subject for each video, get a handful of key takeaways that people would actually remember and actually watch. So if you go to YouTube or if you go to the Project website and want to watch a video, you can watch all 9 of them fairly quickly, or you can just watch 1 or 2. And we wanted to make sure we were retaining people's attention and that they were actually getting useful information out of these. We also focused on, helping educate policymakers and government leadership and really anyone who is interested in the groundwater system. At the bottom there, you see just a thumbnail of a few slides from some of the videos, and we'll play one for you at the end. But we wanted to just focus on giving people the basic tools to understand the research that a lot of you all are doing and the stuff you're hearing in the news. We explain what an aquifer is, what it looks like, what does 1 acre-feet of water look like. So people kind of have the tools to understand the concepts of groundwater conservation and what it actually is. I think we can go to the next slide. This is really funny with our fonts jumping around all over the place. So we also had a little bit of a budget to do a paid digital media campaign, which was advertising to promote these videos once we had them all produced. And so that digital campaign was geo-targeted into primarily Maricopa County with a little bit in Pima and Pinal County as well. We focused on a demographic of adults that were 30 years or older, mostly homeowners with an interest in conservation, water conservation, and we're sort of socially aware of, having an interest in civic responsibility there. The ads were primarily digital display, digital native, and paid social. So digital display ads are ads that you see when you're on like a news website or something like that are obviously ads around the top and on the sides of a website. Digital native ads are more ads that are embedded into content, like on a news page where you see an advertising that looks kind of like it might be another article. And then paid social is obviously like Facebook and LinkedIn and ads that are on platforms like that. The thumbnails along the bottom are an example of one of the ads. These are animations. So this would animate through on, in one little square. So what is groundwater? Where is groundwater? Why does groundwater matter? Watch the Arizona Groundwater 9-part series from Arizona Project Wet. And this would take you to Arizona Project Wet website where you can see all 9 videos and also the credits of the consulting group and the people that we worked with to produce these. I think we can go to the next slide.
Okay, so I'll speak to some of our media reporting. As Kevin had mentioned, with this particular campaign, we were really looking to, and you saw the previous target audiences. So this gives you an idea, and we'll show you an example specifically of the website, but the new users to the website were immense in terms of the traffic we were able to drive there, since Arizona Project What was hosting the video series. Facebook is obviously the most impressive here, and the example of the creative that you saw for the ads that Kevin previewed in that last slide gives you an idea of what the viewer on Facebook would see, and then that you would click through to the video series. And so this was an example of 1,368,000 impressions were received through the Facebook campaign. And by far that was the most successful and where we really focused quite a bit of our efforts, which was, I think, very impressive. Obviously Instagram a little bit less. YouTube gives you an example of the watch time of the videos because they were hosted behind the scenes on YouTube. And then we did see some engagement on Twitter with a lot of shares and retweets. And so basically, in addition to the paid campaign, we looked for all of our partners that we worked with on this project. For example, obviously University of Arizona, ADWR, quite a few of the different organizations that support these public initiatives. We asked them to also share our content and our call to action to the video series. And so we really leveraged a wide network of partnerships in order to spread the word about this video series. And so all of those led to a very successful outcome to the campaign. Next slide, please. So this gives you an idea. We asked for U of A to give us a snapshot of their dashboard, and it gives you a little an idea of the traffic that we were driving to their website in terms of 179% increase in sessions, 213% increase in total users. So gives you an idea of over that campaign timeframe that we were driving a lot of traffic to the website for those folks that were interested in viewing the videos. Next slide, please. So in terms of kind of our summary for the campaign, obviously the response and interest level about this topic and the video series itself really far surpassed, I think, everyone's expectations. I mean, obviously the topic is one that is in the news frequently because we do live in Arizona. And I think that the general public is essentially hungry for learning more about groundwater and why it's important. And so we were very pleased with the overall response. Just some metrics here. Social media ads delivered a 1.55% click-through rate and a 4.46% total click rate, including all activity engagement with the ads. And both of those measurements, if any of you all are in the media or understand, it is above average in terms of a benchmark metric. So we were very pleased with that. 1,027 people viewed at least half of the 3-minute videos, and 762 viewed the full videos on Facebook. So this is specific to Facebook. And in total, the paid social campaign delivered 1,401,000 impressions on Facebook and drove 57,194 total clicks engagements and 20,000 link clicks to the landing page website. So I think from our viewpoint, the investment and the result for that was very substantial. In addition to really, again, continuing to build the community in terms of sharing the videos, and they actually were utilized in various meetings by various organizations, and we were able to really leverage that at the time of the launch. Next slide, please. So in terms of next steps, I think, and we've mentioned this and collaborated with our partners at U of A, we're looking to approach for additional funding to support and extend the life of the video series. As we all know, there are some facts and figures on this series that is now becoming dated. And so that's something that we're going to be looking to hopefully procure some additional funds. Some additional elements that we'd like to see is Spanish language versions of the videos. That's something that we think would be important. Again, updating the graphics to reflect the current data. And then there could be some additional, in our minds, outreach marketing and communications to, again, extend the reach of the video series. So now I think we'd like to, Nick, hopefully you can go ahead and play the first video in the series for us, if you would, please.
Yes, just a second to get, I just need a second to set that up.
Thank you so much. And of course, this is a very big topic, the 9-video series, to present in such a short time frame. So we encourage everyone, I know the link to where the video series was put into the chat. If you haven't seen the video series in its totality, we highly encourage you to visit and watch the videos. And I think you'll find them very enjoyable. In addition, Kevin said to really explaining the various concepts, we also wanted to entertain the viewers. So you'll see some fun elements. We had a kind of a narrator kind of come through the video series that made it very enjoyable, I think. All right, so we're going to go to episode 1. Here we go.
Episode 1, The Unique Hydrological Cycle of Arizona. Arizona, best known for the breathtaking Grand Canyon and the Red Rocks of Sedona and its bustling cities like Phoenix and Tucson, is also known for a more challenging feature, its semi-arid, dry climate. Well over half of the state is defined as desert or dry grassland, with an average yearly temperature of about 84 degrees. And here's the thing. In Arizona, we lose an average of 7 times more water to the atmosphere than we receive from it. So that means a lot more water is going up than coming down. This becomes very important when you consider that every living creature needs water to survive. Like, for example, blue here, a great blue heron. Common to our state, this large bird can be found around water and soaring above our landscape, making him the perfect guide to Arizona's hydrological secrets. Ecosystems throughout Arizona, including those found in the desert, rely on water that arrives in different ways. As long as humans have lived here, they have been finding ways to collect, preserve, through naturally occurring engineered systems. To thrive in this arid environment. In a constant race against evaporation and drought cycles, Arizona's scientists, engineers, and policymakers have moved water from one place to another, channeling it through canals to places where it can be used or stored for later. However, there is another source of life-giving water one not seen by the naked eye. And to find it, we don't need to look from this vantage point, but instead, we just have to look down at our feet. That's right, our feet. Because below the surface of where you are right now, a huge resource exists. It turns out 98% of Earth's available freshwater is what's known as groundwater. Yep, you got it. Water underground. So, is there groundwater for us to use here where we live? In fact, there is. And we have been pumping wells to get it out of the ground for many, many years now. Without question, groundwater has been the most essential resource in Arizona to grow our food, manufacture products, and to use right in our homes every day. But how much of this groundwater can we really use? Watch episode 2 for a deeper dive into groundwater.
I'm sure the rest of you now want to watch episode 2. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of flavor as to the tone of the videos, the graphics that we utilize to really help tell the story, and then obviously the beautiful imagery that we were able to source, highlighting statewide really our groundwater resources. So that's what we had for today.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Any questions or comments from the committee?
Yeah, yes, Pam, that one slide, help me out. I was reading something wrong, I'm sure. It said like 1,000 or 1,100 views of your program here. I'm sure it's way more than 1,000. What did that mean, 1,000?
Did I go back to the slide?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, you have to go back to a previous slide.
It was 1027 views, at least half.
Yeah, so each of the media channels is broken down into different reporting. So we're that one stat on the third grouping of information there. That was specifically on Facebook, what Facebook is tracking, individual engagement on the videos. So
that's 1,000 people that saw the ad on Facebook and watched the video. So that's just what that 1,000 people is.
Okay. That's not how many views that your videos have seen in total. That was just off clicking one Facebook ad. All right. That adds a lot more to it. Thank you.
More context.
Roy or Leslie, any comments from you all or questions?
Yeah, I really like that you're looking at doing a Spanish language version. I think that's a great outreach to people, in different industries, landscaping stuff, that they could be educated in that area. That's good stuff.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I think the videos are nice. Back in the day, we used to do little newspapers that we handed out to fourth graders, I think, in all the elementary schools. And I think this is in today's time, this is how we connect with the elementary schools. I think this is fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
I have no questions. Any comments from staff? None? Okay, you have some questions from the community?
We do have a few. Before we get to the call to the public, we do go to our director report.
Okay, that's good. We'll do all these questions then. So, hearing nothing else, let's move to item 7, and Natalie will provide us with the AMA Director's Report. Natalie?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I don't have a whole lot today. We've had some really good presentations throughout today. Hopefully, you can tell that we have a lot going on.
Boy.
I wanted to provide a little bit of an update on staffing. We've got a lot of moving pieces with staff, and the next time we meet, I'll be able to update you further, because I think we have 6 new people starting on Monday. So, a lot of things changing around here. So, you heard from Colin just a little bit today. Colin is our new statewide planning manager. He's responsible for supply and demand and also for our statewide programs team, which includes community water systems, drought and conservation, outreach. I always forget one of them. Did I miss one?
Community water systems, rural partnerships.
Rural partnerships. Thank you. I always forget one of them. We also, sorry, I'm losing track of things. Nick, you've heard from Nick a whole lot today. Nick is our brand new GUAC coordinator. So you will be hearing, you've heard a lot from him today. You'll be hearing more from him going forward as we, especially as we get to the end of the year and do the withdrawal fees and that sort of thing. Yeah, so a lot of moving things around staff. We will plan to, ahead of the next meeting, provide an updated staff structure and the kind of listing of who is in which position, just so you all have that reference. In terms of kind of all the context of all of the other things going on, I would request a little bit of patience on ADWR staff. You've heard a lot about supply and demand. You've heard about some of the drought things we have going on. ADWR is also through the legislature tracking a very large number of bills this session, kind of, and some of those activities as a result of the council, the Governor's Water Policy Council and the recommendations that were made there. So we have an extraordinary amount going on right now. There are really extraordinary workloads, but we are really excited about the folks that we are able to bring on board to help out with that load. I'm excited to give you a more thorough update on all of our staffing changes in the near future here. So that's really all I have for today.
Great. Any questions or comments from the committee? Steve?
No, not right now. Thank you.
Rory?
No, none for me. No.
Leslie? Nope.
No, I'm
Leslie?
good too. Thanks, Natalie.
And thank you. That's really all of the reports today were great. I really appreciate them. They're very well done. Good luck at legislative time of year, which could what, pursue May-ish. It's always a lot of fun. Always a lot going on. I wish you luck with all that. And let's just move to any comments or requests from the committee. And they're called to the council about anything that you think we ought to have on a future agenda or any general comments. And we'll start with you, Steve. Do you have any?
No, nothing right now. Thank you.
Rory, do you have any?
No, nothing right now. I just like to say, Natalie's doing a great job and all the staff over there. I know there's a lot on their plate. Thank you for your efforts.
Thanks, Rory.
And Leslie, anything to add?
I don't have any comments or questions. I'll just add that I do think that the presentations were great today. I think it's always nice to see the positive outcome from the funding that we're providing. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you, Leslie. And I really don't have anything other than to say that presentations would be great. I look forward to getting the internet citations so I can easily find the full reports. I'd like to see more on some of the things that we don't have time for here today. With that, let's move to call to the public, and maybe we can start with these questions on the report. If any of the committee members have time pressures, I think we don't necessarily, if we lost a quorum, we could still answer. So if somebody has serious time pressure, but why don't we launch into these requests? And why don't we start with his, because he's been so nice to wait here. And if there are questions that only he can answer, then he would be here, then we can let him go, and we'll go back to the others. Does that work?
That sounds good. Looks like we have, a question from, okay. Oh, yeah, the question, let's answer the question. Yeah.
Let's start with his.
Okay, I would advise the public to, in moving through all the agenda items and occurring all those questions, I want to make sure we, get to the ones that weren't addressed, so I would advise the public to, retype their question into the chat box so we can get to it. Matt, Anthony, I've been trying to unmute you. If you can unmute yourself and speak, that'd be great.
Sure. Can you?
Yep.
All right, great. So yeah, the reason for joining today's call, I'm a 2013 Arizona State graduate for the School of Public Affairs, where I got a degree in public policy analysis and a degree in urban metropolitan studies. I now work in development for hematology and oncology, but I've maintained an interest, ongoing water crisis we have. I understand that Arizona wants to be, kind of ground zero for establishing not only sustainable Phoenix, but sustainable state. During senior year, we did research. Myself, a master's student, and then I'm Nicole Darnell. I know as a foundation professor now at the ASU. On the eliminating restrictions on the use of native species in Phoenix landscapes. There's a big cost analysis. We have this document still available.
Sorry, Mr. Anthony, I'm going to go ahead and interrupt you. I apologize. You seem to have a pretty bad echo on your line. Are you able to, do you have like a computer on that has a speaker on or maybe a secondary mic or something like that?
Yeah, let me, thank you. One second. Is that better?
That's much better. Yes, thank you.
Please proceed.
But yeah, I am Arizona State grad, 2013, School of Public Affairs, just cut it down there. And during my senior year, myself, one of the professors with the School of Public Affairs, and then a master's student had done a benefit cost analysis on eliminating restrictions on the use of native species in Phoenix homeowners landscapes. Namely, some of the HOAs, particularly with the influx of residents in the 60s and 70s, had said, hey, we want to have grass front yards, we want it to look like California, whatever the case may be, and so forth. And what our analysis yielded, to be very concise, is that if those restrictions alone were eliminated, the expected 5-year societal benefits, most likely scenario, would be a savings of $570 to $600 million, with the most optimistic scenario of $2.4 billion to $2.5 billion. Granted, our methodologies, I'm not somebody like Gary Woodward. I'm not somebody who, can get really in the weeds like I'm sure a lot of you can. But what I'm just trying to figure out by partaking in these meetings is there a way to potentially leverage, what myself and my colleagues had done, 10 years ago at a time where I think, water usage and the water crisis, particularly out west, is more of a priority. So that's my succinct comment. I don't know if there's anybody who I could share the document with, I could have further conversation with via email or otherwise. But that's the nuts and bolts of it. Thank you for your time, Council.
Thank you. I'm not sure this is really a question, but I don't know if you have any comment on that. I'm not really sure this is what you're doing.
I work with an awful lot of the water conservation professionals in the state, and there's always a point in their career where they just, it's like, I'm so tired of asking them, I just want to tell them what to do. But that doesn't usually fly so well. And sometimes even things come along that do reduce water demand and they're not embraced. And I've done a number of studies recently on artificial turf. And it's really hard to find a conservation professional who wants to embrace artificial turf. complicated. I think that the overseeding with winter rye and HOA common areas is a huge problem. Not only do you need to do that at all, but if you're doing it, you at least do it efficiently. And so that might be an area where some sort of regulatory approach, instead of just trying to convince them to do the right thing and save water and money, might be warranted. But it's also hard to find a young landscape architect who isn't all in on using drought-tolerant plants, and particularly natives wherever they can, and will push back when the client wants to put a lot of turf in. So, you know, we'll get there eventually. Sometimes you'd like to get there right now using, you know, a regulatory approach, but that doesn't often fly.
Thank you. I don't know if the department has any comments. I think there's some realities out there that need to be dealt with.
Yeah, so there are conservation requirements in the management plan for HOAs if they have 10 or more acres of water-intensive landscaping. So water-intensive landscaping includes turf and any ponds or water features, those types of things that might exist. Those conservation requirements do limit the amount of water that can be used on turfed areas, that type of thing. They also provide allotments for low water use acreage. You could certainly send along the information you have, but in terms of regulatory authority, I think that's something that we would need to look into further there.
It might
Yeah,
extend into the legislature.
Yeah, that's my instinct.
One way or another.
Positive about that, yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, one other comment. I just finished a study for the CAP where we looked at all of the GRD number land, 100,000 parcels. And one of the findings, we're looking at factors of outdoor demand. For every 100 cases where we saw over a 2-year period of turf being removed from a household, there were 94 where it went in. So you have this big churn. You know, everybody thinks there's a gradual removal of turf, but there isn't. There's a big removal of turf and then almost as big, you know, planting of turf, and we're seeing a small difference. What we did see was that on new construction, artificial turf dominates real turf now 20-1. And once it's put in, it's not removed. So turf at the residential scale may be an issue that's going to go away over time, although not in a way that a lot of conservation people love, you know, because there's no habitat value to artificial.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your comment. Makes a lot of sense, but it is a rough road to hoe. Next.
If there are other comments from the public, please be known in the chat or raise your hand, and you can unmute yourself.
We want to concentrate on his, so that he can go.
Yeah, comments on Mr. Woodward's presentation, Mr. Woodard's presentation.
And Stephen, did you have a comment on this?
I have something I want to ask Natalie later, but not
Okay.
regarding
Great.
I'm not seeing any more comments or raised hands.
Thank you very much. Very helpful. Appreciate it. Let's move to some of the other ones, maybe go starting with the first ones we didn't do. Or as close as we can get to that.
Many of them were answered within the chat or
Right.
directed to the proper person to ask that question. If there's any more from the public, I'd recommend that they put them in now or raise their hand and we can simply unmute you.
So Nick has you on the screen, and if you have a question you'd like to ask right now, please, from the public, please raise your hand so we can see you have a question you'd like to raise or a comment you'd like to make.
think we may have answered most of these.
Okay.
Seeing none.
Okay, we're seeing none, so we will close the public comment section. And unless, oh, and you had a question, let's hear.
I think it's low sugar, we're getting so close to the- I forgot what was the burning issue, Natalie. I think you're the woman to answer, but, you know, there's an issue that's arisen over at the legislature to, through DWR, to make a new AMA in the Gila Bend area. What can you tell us about that issue?
I can tell you that we are holding a public meeting next week to, it is an informal public meeting to receive comments on whether the director should initiate formal proceedings to consider designating the Gila Bend Basin as an active management area. So it is an informal comment period. The distinction there is that there is, if the director were to decide to initiate formal proceedings, then there's a statutory process and a statutory timeline there. So this is informal because it's kind of outside of that statutory process. It's a really an initial step to kind of consider whether we'd like to go down that path.
Designating new AMAs is in statute. There's a process.
There's a process.
I mean,
Yeah.
And Mr. Bushetsky, he would be overseeing that
Yes.
process?
So the ADWR director has the statutory authority to initiate a process to consider whether to designate new AMAs.
And then can you tell us, how did it even come up in the Gila Bend area? Is that from somebody in the public or is it governmental?
So in the process of the Governor's Water Policy Council, there were several basins that were identified as areas of severe groundwater decline, and Gila Bend was one of those basins.
Okay, so it came out of that new council or committee, what do we call that? Okay. All right, so public comment first.
Yeah.
Meeting, and then the director will make a decision whether he's going to initiate the full-blown.
Right.
Any idea then, what does the process, is it a 9 months, 9 years?
So if a process is initiated, which we don't necessarily have a timeline or anything on whether there would be a process initiated or when that would be, but if a process is initiated, we would issue notice of that. And when we issue notice of that, we would be required to hold a hearing within 30 to 60 days of that notice. So there would be a formal comment period, there would be a public hearing where ADWR would provide additional information about the area. And again, we would take public comments at that time for the formal process. Within 30 days of that hearing, we would be required to issue findings and would typically at that time issue a decision on the matter. So the formal process is 60 to 90 days. After a decision is issued, there are timelines for appeals and that type of thing. So it kind of depends on all of the decisions and moving pieces there.
Yeah, that's right. What was the most recent AMA created?
The most recent AMA created was the Douglas AMA, and that was established by a different process.
Different process.
So that was established by local initiation. There's also a statutory process where folks in an area can submit a petition to the county, and the result of that is that they would have a local election on whether to designate an AMA, which is different than the process where the director initiates rather than having local initiation.
Great.
Does that area have an INA?
No.
So they're basically, they're in essentially unregulated, other than this new process of trying to come up with, that we saw today, of coming up with estimates of water levels. There's really no significant regulation.
Right, and I would emphasize too that the supply and demand analyses are not a regulatory.
Yes, I understand. I'm sorry, I didn't misunderstand, but misexpressed, I felt, because I understand that it's not regulatory, it's just collecting data.
Analysis, yes, exactly.
Is there anything else the committee wishes to discuss? Hearing none, I'm going to adjourn the meeting without objection. Any objections? It is 11:59. Thank you.
Still on time.
Good job, Chris.
Good job, Frank.